Police emerging as main suspects. And on Punchline tonight, Kilimani gangs and COVID millionaires will look at the top stories of the week. Welcome to the program. Well, today marks the International Day of Enforced Disappearances, and on the Kenyan coast, residents accuse the police of perpetuating the menace. This even as Amnesty International reports that a total of 539 cases of missing persons were recorded between 2007 and 2019. Giverson Minor with more.
Human rights organization and residents of Coast Region today held protests in Kwale County to commemorate the International Day for Victims of Enforced Disappearances. The protests that were held in Diani town were convened by Kwale Citizens Oversight Forum, who say that a large number of Kwale residents have in the last 5 years disappeared mysteriously only to be found killed.
We want to send a very clear message. It is the responsibility of the government or the police to ensure that the citizens are protected, and in case anyone gets missing, it is also their responsibility to make sure that those who are missing are able to be gotten and reunited with their families.
They blame the police for the enforced disappearances, saying the officers have been arresting them for being suspected of being members of organized terror groups. As coast residents protested for disappearances of their relatives, a somber mood engulfed a Garissa family following the disappearance of their kin on the eve of International Day of Enforced Disappearance.
Kama hiko makosa hiko mahakama. Kama hiko mahakama, alafu kama hiko makosa yake mimi nikubali maneno yote, hata kama mkamia moja nafunga mimi nikubali. A
35-year-old Irshan Adhan Abdullahi, a father of two, was abducted on his way to Fafi sub-county where he picks his camel milk for sale in Garissa town.
Mimi mwenyewe personally nimeuliza, just they have to identify themselves. Watu waonyeshe sharia kwamba wao ni serikali. Kuuliza tu wameanza kunipiga. Wakachukua na ndugu yangu, wakamweka kwa gari ambao ni Brobox. Registration ya hiyo gari ni KAT 002Q. Tulipopeleka police station hiyo gari registration number, wamesema hiyo gari hayuko, hiyo number ni fake.
According to Muslim for Human Rights, at least 197 people have disappeared without a trace in the last 4 years.
Southern parts of Garissa County is the one which is leading most of the cases, followed by Fafi, Dadaab and Garissa Township. So we will do a follow-up, especially with this case, whereby we do have the family who are on board, and we will do a follow-up and support this family till justice is being prevailed.
According to International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, and I quote, the crime of enforced disappearances inflicts severe harm, including on the family of the missing persons, and spreads terror within society. It is a crime punishable under the ICC Rome Statute, end of quote. Human rights defenders now on the parliament committees on justice and legal affairs and the Interior Cabinet Secretary to conduct independent probe on the disappearances. Giverson Minor for Punchline.
Deputy President William Ruto has hit out at leaders who he says want to change the constitution in order to expand the numbers of political seats. The DP says the leaders should instead focus on cushioning Kenyans from the current harsh economic times.
In a move seen as a return to pre-COVID-19 times, Deputy President Dr. William Ruto was back in a near full capacity church, starting off in Embakasi with his brigade where he took his 2022 gospel. With the current clamor for constitutional changes through the Building Bridges initiative, the Deputy President could not help but hit out at leaders out to change the process for their own gain.
Kenya kuna Wakenya milioni 45 na wao wako na haki kama vile viongozi wako na haki, na mambo yao kwa sasa wanajali sana vile watoto wao watasoma, vile biashara zao zitaamka tena, vile nafasi zao za kazi zilizopotea zitapatikana tena, vile tutafufua uchumi.
With the COVID-19 pandemic having brought about untold suffering from many, the DP called for concerted efforts from leaders to enable Kenyans overcome the current harsh times.
Even as we go into the future, we must carry the whole country as we make the decisions that we are going to make. And I want to agree that we must move together. We must carry all Kenyans together, because that's our primary responsibility as leaders.
Leaders accompanying the DP, led by Kikuyu legislator Kilimani Shungwa, further tore into persons implicated in the current COVID-19 funds theft, calling on those culpable to carry their own cross and resign to pave way for investigations.
Wasituite fellow Kenyans, let's sanitize, let's wash our hands, let's keep social distance, and you are not sanitizing from corruption money. You are not sanitizing yourself or keeping social distance from public funds. I want to tell the CS Health, the PS Health, and all those others who have been mentioned in this COVID haste, please keep social and physical distance from public funds.
Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, kama kakwe hata jiuzulu kufikia Jumatatu na mochache, ajisha hao kazi, wasirudi ofisini kwa sababu wataharibu uchunguzi.
The DP later went on amid the people tour in Embakasi, though in a total disregard of the laid down COVID-19 guidelines, among them a ban on public gatherings as well as social distancing measures. Daniel Kitu for Punchline.
Malindi Member of Parliament Aisha Jumwa surrendered herself to authorities after a 3-day search for her by police over her alleged involvement in the embezzlement of CDF kitty to a tune of 19 million shillings. Martin Opio brings us the latest controversy, quoting the embattled legislator.
Following a Mombasa court's directive that required Malindi Member of Parliament Aisha Jumwa to surrender herself at the Port Police Station before Monday, the MP on Sunday reported to the said police station before a lapse on the directive. Jumwa, however, claims she has been in Nairobi going about her business. She says no one has made attempts to reach out to her despite an order in place demanding for her arrest.
Sidhani kama kuna mtu amenitafuta because simu yangu ilikuwa iko wazi. Nilikuwa Nairobi, sijakuwa Tanzania wala Uganda. Nimekuwa Kenya, nimekuja hapa jana usiku. Kwa hivyo siyasikia habari za kwamba mimi natafutwa. Kila nimesikia kwa jaji alisema mimi niwe kotini siku ya Jumatatu. That's all.
On Friday, Aisha's co-accused suspects were released on a cash bail before Mombasa Chief Magistrate Edna Nyaloti for graft charges amounting to 57 million Kenya shillings of the Malindi Constituency Development Fund.
Kwa nini niogope kushikwa? Kama nimefanya kosa nahitaji kushikwa, mimi ni Mkenya kama kawaida. Sheria inalinda kila mmoja. Na sheria lazima ni msumeno, inakata kwa waheshimiwa, kwa wale ambao si waheshimiwa, sisi wote ni wa Kenya. Kwa hivyo kama kuna makosa ambayo nimecommit na wanahitaji kunishika, mimi niko, watanikujia na watanichukua.
Not new to controversy, Aisha Jumwa has become a face to reckon with in the current political setup attributed to her outspoken nature. The Member of Parliament of Iden won the seat in 2017 on an ODM ticket, was at one point at the brink of an expulsion from the party following an opposition she led against the party leader Raila Odinga, where Aisha drummed up support for Deputy President William Ruto. This, according to Aisha, was brought about by betrayal that came from the March 2018 truce between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga after the contested 2017 presidential elections.
Tarehe 9 mwezi wa Machi 2018. Mimi nakumbuka nilikuwa niko nyumbani na nikawa naangalia tu runinga.
Mambo yanavyokwenda.
Mambo yana. Hata sisi tulikuwa tunafanya nini? Maana yake hakuna aliyejua. Tulimuona tu Raila ametoka na iwampa mkono Uhuru Kenyatta.
Mkashanga.
Tulibaki vinywa wazi chembecho wa Swahili.
But that was to be the beginning of her tribulations, as the very same year of 2019, Aisha would put herself in hot soup following an altercation that led to the killing of a man at a home of an ODM aspirant. According to the police, Jumwa stormed the home of ODM candidate Ruben Katana and his uncle was shot dead in the ensuing chaos.
Na huo mkutano umeendelea hapo na maneno yalikuwa yakipangwa, watu walikuwa napanga mafujo zao kesho wafanye because kuna vijana ambao wameletwa kutoka Nairobi na officials wa chama walikuwa hapo.
Despite all her controversies, some of which has been attributed to her allegiance to the Tanga Tanga team, Aisha has maintained that even with the new corruption charges she will be facing come Monday, she will continue with her support for the deputy president.
As you can see me, I'm home, relaxed. I have my friends here.
Martin Opio, Punchline.
Time for us to take a short break. On the other side of this break, our first discussion tonight, Kilimani's gangs are certainly shocking the nation. A couple of conmen first, then after that came brothels, fake gold guns, and now, of course, brazen murder, rather. So what is happening to this community that was once the dream residential area of the city, and why does it appear that a well-known group of thugs are operating now with sheer impunity? My guests tonight, police spokesman Charles Owino, and also the Kilimani Foundation Project Chair Irungu Houghton join me on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Ann, sasa umepiga salute?
How are you?
Better than you. Hello?
I don't think so. You're standby. We're going up immediately after this.
Oh, you are on standby?
Yes.
All right.
So today you're not going to be next to me because of social distance.
Mm-hmm.
This will be your camera. And I believe there is your seat, yes? So you will just speak directly to the camera.
Uh-huh. I don't sit directly to you.
Yes. So, and then you're able to see Irungu from there. He's at home.
Oh, Irungu is ako nyumbani. Oh, hiyo ni area yake?
Yeah.
Ah, he's safe. Irungu is safe. Kama hiyo ni area yake, he's okay. I have a nice lady there called Fatuma. Yeah.
Oh, she's the area police boss. She's the what? In charge?
She's the officer in charge of CID.
Of CID.
And she's done a very good job there.
We'll debate that.
Eh?
We'll debate that.
Yes.
Okay, stand by. Director, can I see the preview?
Okay.
Show me the preview, the split. Director, can Irungu hear?
I can, yes.
Okay, I need his fold back. I can't hear him. Fold back here, Irungu.
can't hear
Fold
me?
back.
Okay, I'm disconnecting.
Kazungu. Kazungu, tuongeze kwa studio.
They can't hear.
Irungu, just say hello to me and confirm you're on standby.
Irungu akusikii.
Irungu. Haya, director. Okay. Kazungu nataka Please, the spokesman has to be able to hear Irungu. So that full back. Irungu, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Confirm that you're on standby.
I'm very much here and ready.
I can hear on my earpiece. Kazungu, nataka fold back ya studio. Irungu, 1, 2, 3, please.
Hi, this is Irungu Houghton, Kilimani Project Foundation Chairperson.
Thank you. Perfect. Got you. Charles, you're hearing him, right?
Yes, I can hear him.
Okay, fine. There we are.
Hi, Bwana Spokesman.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to be on the show
Kilimani.
again with you. We are good, contrary from what we are reading.
All right.
All right, stand by, gentlemen. Stand by. Okay. 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 Masharia? Masharia? And welcome back to Punchline. Thanks for staying with us. Once a model setting, Kilimani is now getting a bad name for some of the capital's most shocking crimes that had one social media user describe it as a place to die for. quite literally. Drugs, prostitution, fraud and even murder is becoming synonymous with what for many residents should have been a quiet family neighborhood. Joining us now to discuss Kilimani gangs and crime in general in our communities is police spokesman Charles Owino and Kilimani Foundation Project Chairman Irungu Houghton. And welcome to you both. Charles, I want to start with you. And Kilimani, before we speak more broadly now, there has been a perception that Kilimani is quickly becoming a gangland in Nairobi with shootings and fraud hitting headlines. Would you say that there has been a significant rise in crime in this area in the past year as compared perhaps to other communities in the capital? And what would you say is fueling it?
Thank you so much. First of all, it is important to state that Kilimani has grown quite fast. This is an area that we had homes, set up of homes, gated homes, and eventually we have developed kind of flats. It is in Kilimani that we are getting well-established apartments of good quality, and many people live in Kilimani. So we have furnished apartments in Kilimani. We also have the highest number of clubs in Kilimani area, and the population has grown. But from where I sit, I think we've done well in terms of management of crime in Kilimani, because a few years ago, we had a lot of house breakings, we had a lot of car breakings, people following others from the bank and stealing from them. You remember the famous Lavender Akinyi, who was good at organizing crimes, especially breaking into people's houses. So much of these people have been arrested, have been charged before court. But now what we have seen in Kilimani area are kind of white-collar jobs, where we have people dealing in gold, especially people who deceive, they cheat, and they con people, and they deal with large sums of money. So we've had that group of people. The CID in Kilimani have carried out raids, and we have managed to break up the syndicate. But remember, Kilimani having been an area that is occupied mainly by middle-class people with a large number of clubs, with very good furnished apartments and so on and so forth, you find that definitely we will have to get a few of white-collar crimes within that particular place. But generally, we've done well. We've done so well in managing crime in Kilimani.
There is, though, growing concern that these supposed gangs, who you have said are dealing white-collar crime, are known to the public, including the nightclubs, which you've mentioned, that they operate from, but somehow they continue to be seen to operate with reckless abandon. Why do certain individuals appear to be untouchable?
I don't think there's anybody who is untouchable within that area. We've taken most of the ringleaders of, especially those dealing in gold nuggets and so on and so forth. We've taken most of them to court, including, you remember about some 1 month or two ago, there was some mugging that took place within Kilimani, where somebody, some two gentlemen robbed an individual who was robbed him of his laptop and his phones, and it was circulating in social media. I think it just took us 4 days to have those individuals nabbed and the laptop and the phones recovered.
But take, for instance, spokesman, I beg your pardon, the case of Chris Obure. Before the shooting to death of Kevin Omwenga, he was reportedly caught up in gun drama more than once, yet he continued to have a license to carry. From a law enforcement perspective, what is the challenge in dealing with some of these cases before they turn deadly?
The position is that the case of Chris Obure is not something that somebody can say that we've not dealt with. An individual actually reported him to have threatened, that he threatened that individual with his firearm, And CID Kilimani arrested him and had him charged. Unfortunately, the complainant did not go to court severally, and therefore Chris had to be discharged from court. But even when he was discharged from court, the police in Kilimani, more so the DCIO, wrote to the board that licenses civilian firearms and forwarded the firearms to the board so that he could, the firearms could be taken away from him. But as a matter of law, from the information we have from the board, is that the gentleman went to court and got court orders for the firearms to be returned. That is the information we've gotten. But actually the police did their part, and I'm sure the board also did their part. And remember, almost everything that we do must be done in accordance to the law. The fact that somebody puts on a good suit and we can say mutia vituko does not mean that you'll just pick him without any proper reason. Right. And deal with him. You must deal with him in accordance to the law, and I think so far we did our best.
Joining me now is Irungu Houghton. Irungu, I hope you can hear us. He is the chair of the Kilimani Project Foundation board. Irungu, the website of your organization reads in part, and I quote, "The community is known for its creativity, aliveness, tenacity, and neighborliness. The area rarely experiences violence, crime, or a sense of isolation," end quote. Yet here we are with the reality of a new Kilimani, where numerous massage spas, which are a euphemism for brothels, populate residential areas, and where within, I think, a span of 2 weeks or so, 2 young residents of Kilimani were murdered. A young woman, Shilan Murage, found dead in a flower bed, having apparently sustained blunt force trauma injuries to the head, and Kevin Omwenga, who was shot dead. From your perspective, engaging with the community, what is going on, and does it seem to you that the area has now attracted a deadly criminal element?
So first of all, I think we need to recognize that Kilimani is one of Nairobi's older suburbs. In the 3,000 acres, there are 43,000 people, and as the police spokesperson says, there are it is now a mixed residential and business area. What is causing the level of crime is not just the criminality or the crimes that you've described. And before maybe I go into that, just to say I don't wish to minimize the death of either Kevin Omwenga or Sheila Murage, or even the shooting of Felix Orinda, otherwise known as DJ Evolve. These were tragic cases. But I think we need to put this into context. Comparatively to many other parts of Nairobi, Kilimani is still fairly peaceful. We have probably one homicide a month, which if you compare that to places like Pangani or any of the eastern part of Nairobi, these are extremely low numbers for most of the wards of Nairobi. But having said that, there is a critical problem that comes with another C, not crime, but corruption and neglect. What is destroying Nairobi, what is destroying Kilimani is the lack of regulation, the lack of zoning, and the lack of adherence to building bylaws. So we are seeing a proliferation of different constructions. We have a number of different apartments that are going up. Just to give an example, despite having a zoning regulation of 4 levels, we are now seeing something like 20-story buildings coming up with about 900 units. And that is what, as the police spokesperson has said, makes Kilimani so difficult, because essentially what you have is not a family zone or a residential zone. What you have is the beginnings of a CBD or a central business district that is just not regulated. So we are being failed by the building bylaws not being enforced, by the construction committees, and by the alcohol licensing committees that are essentially being allowed, or rather being bribed, to allow for all kinds of activity to happen in the same space. So it is possible to have a so-called massage parlor, a bar, residential homes, and also to have buildings with large numbers of businesses that are not registered, that are essentially being used for white-collar crime. So that is primarily the challenge that the people of Kilimani have.
And because
but the reason why we say this in our website.
Right. Just hold that thought, because you've made an interesting point that nature of flouting of laws and regulations also provides the ground or the space for other criminality. I think impunity is one word that has been used to describe the way in which some of these gangs operate. That they seem to be well known to law enforcement and to everybody. Everybody knows something fishy is going on with someone, and as the police spokesman has said, that just because people are extra colorful, that does not give them the mandate to deal with them up until the law has been broken. How would you say impunity is factoring largely then into other suburbs where we're seeing a rise in crime, Irungu? How does that operate, with police on the one hand also being blamed for, turning a blind eye to some of these things?
I mean, I think there are a number of things that are happening. So the experience we have as Kilimani is probably played out across the other 84 wards across Nairobi. Uncontrolled urban growth, a lack of bylaws, allow for example, soft drugs and narcotics to be essentially sold in very many of our neighborhoods across Nairobi. And this is the same from places like Langata, South B, to places like Mathare and Dandora. So I think the challenge really is to really create a culture in which communities are given the space to work with the Nairobi Metropolitan Service and the County of Nairobi to ensure that there are physical plans for these areas, that any building that is done in these areas has input and buy-in by communities, so that you don't have this proliferation without any sense of control. I think the third thing that needs to happen is that you need to see a responsiveness from the local government to the interest of communities to get involved. I mean, just to give an example, we have written, as the Kilimani Project Foundation, on behalf of Kilimani residents, 4 letters to the Nairobi Metropolitan Service talking about buildings that do not meet the current bylaws for green spaces or for height, or for the proximity to major junctions. And those letters are ignored. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges. But as a community, we have been very dynamic. We have been very active. We're one of the communities, for example, that had a COVID-19 response plan within the first 2 weeks of the COVID-19 breakout. We have provided support for about 400 women who became unemployed. These are domestic workers. They were coming into the area from places like Kangware and Kibra. And as a result of our work, these women now have a community-based organization, and they have begun to develop their own cottage industry to be able to do that. And just to say also that the relationship between the local police and the Kilimani community has been, on the whole, a very good relationship. We have a lot of confidence in the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. We have confidence in the office in charge of the police station and the police service that are there. And of course, it's not that we don't have problems with the odd bribery and extortions, but on the whole, the crime levels of Kilimani will be managed essentially by increasing the interaction between our police and the community in this area. And unlike other communities, we've not seen high levels of police brutality. We've not seen high levels of extrajudicial killings. This is generally an example that can be exported to different parts of the country, where communities, when working with the police service, can actually close down the space for criminals, but can also make sure that there is a humane policing that takes place.
All right, as we wind up...
We are one community, for example, that has managed to stop 4 nightclubs in this area.
Right. Sorry about that. Spokesman, beyond Kilimani, it is arguable that there are hundreds of the quote-unquote Chris Obures all across the country whose wealth or dubious dealings are well known but appear to operate under some kind of protection. And I know you said that there is none for them, but they are believed to work as proxies for the political class and to receive some kind of protection in exchange. Are these crews linked to politicians, those who who you have said are perpetuating white-collar crime? And is this something that the police are investigating at all?
I don't think politicians have anything to do with the activities that we see in Kilimani, save for situations like where Irungu is saying that there could be impunity in terms of planning and management within these particular places. Though as police, we don't experience that directly, but as residents, I'm sure maybe that could be a point of concern. But that would be addressed by the county government. But I don't think there are politicians that are involved in activities there, whether it is people dealing with the famous wash business, gold nuggets, and so on and so forth. I don't think politicians are involved. But there was one incident where a politician was involved in a shooting incident. And if you look at even the cases that we are raising, whether it is case for Chris Obure, or the case for the politician who shot, these are acquaintances, these are friends. This is not crime that you can say that some criminals have come into Kilimani and they are out there to harass people, to mug people and do such like things. These are, if you look at the serious crimes that have taken place, it's between acquaintances and people who are very close and who are friends. And in the two, out of the three, except the one involving the lady, they involve persons with licensed firearms. So Kilimani, basically, if you look at it, being a middle-class area, and given the mushrooming of apartments and bars, you may also assume that there could be high circulation of money with individuals around that place. And that could also be an attraction to criminals. But so far, the criminals have been put at bay, they have been managed, and those who have tried have been arrested. So I think so far so good. The police officers in the area have done a very good job. But save for the few situations, the few cases which are there, I think they are manageable, and so far we've done well.
Finally, spokesman, you know, in this COVID period and lockdown and curfews and all of that, how would you describe crime across the country? Would you say there has been a marked decrease? In some cases, we're hearing of a marked increase, for instance, in gender-based violence cases. On the whole, how would you describe the impact of COVID-19 to crime?
Basically, because you see we have had curfews, it means that movement for individuals are limited, and that definitely limits crime. And we have not only seen a decrease in crime, we have also seen a decrease in road accidents, especially when buses are not moving at night, because we get a lot of accidents at night involving buses. And also criminals, the movement of people. When there are many people moving on the roads at night, then there are chances of criminals even waylaying them, and therefore increasing the chances of people committing crime, or people getting attacked by criminals, because they are moving around looking for attacking people and maybe robbing them and getting money. So far, the crime rate has definitely gone down. But you would also find crimes involving persons. Somebody may be assaulting the other, or maybe stabbing the other. We still have a few cases here and there. And even when you go across our borders, you've seen we are slightly more peaceful, though we are quite vigilant along the borders, but we are slightly more peaceful. We have lesser incidents. And so I think we have done so well during the COVID period.
All right, that's our time. Police spokesman Charles Owino, and thanks very much, Irungu Houghton of the Kilimani Project Foundation. Time for us to take a short break. On the other side of this break, we explore the world of COVID millionaires. And KEMSA board chair Kembi Gitura joins us to set the record straight. We're talking after this. we're just going to focus on in basically three things. Audience questions is one. Second is the claims of the involvement of CS and PS, and third is procurement process. So it's not really much. It's just those three areas. Hello?
Hi, hello.
Got it? And welcome back to Punchline. Thank you for staying with us. Revelations that underhand dealings may have influenced the award of lucrative tenders for the supply of COVID-19 materials has caused furor with the medical authority KEMSA on the spot over the matter. Multiple investigation agencies, including several parliamentary committees, are probing this issue as an anxious public seeks answers. Joining me now is KEMSA Board Chair, Ambassador Kembi Gitura. Welcome to Punchline.
Thank you very much.
So I want to start very quickly and briefly with the latest. The suspended KEMSA CEO, Dr. Jonah Manjari, claimed that KEMSA was under intense pressure from CS Mutahi Kagwe and PS Susan Mochache and an unnamed brigadier to handpick suppliers for COVID-19 materials. As the board chair, are you specifically aware of any such influence or duress from the cabinet secretary or indeed the PS?
No, I'm not.
So when you heard these claims, were you surprised?
Yeah, quite actually, because, you know, this COVID-19 was declared a pandemic on or about 15th of March this year. We didn't know about COVID-19. And the CS Mutahi Kagwe was a newly appointed cabinet secretary. He had just come on board, and PS Susan Mochache was also in the ministry. And so there were several issues and several things that had to be done immediately. You recall that, for instance, Bagadi Hospital had to be equipped on the order of the president so that we could have a place for isolation of the new COVID-19 cases, people testing positive. We had to put about 120 beds there. There had to be ventilators, there had to be PPEs and all those other things. And these were new things that are not in the everyday balance of KEMSA, for instance.
But before we get into the procurement, in as far as those two officers are concerned, you have no knowledge of the same. Your CEO never at one point confided in you, presumably, that he was under any duress.
No, he didn't.
All right. He also claimed that there was a certain brigadier who was equally putting pressure on KEMSA to do things a certain way. Are you aware of who that is?
I'm not aware of that.
The first you heard of it was at the Senate?
Well, he mentioned it at the Senate. It was also mentioned at the National Assembly the previous day, you know, when you had the Committee of Health questioning us as a board of directors and also the management on issues to do with COVID-19.
Right.
And certain issues came up, and in the National Assembly, as much as in the Senate, there were allegations that we were under pressure from the minister or from the PS. And I made it clear that that was not the position.
All right. What was their involvement, if any, at all in tendering? Was there any?
You see, a lot of the things that we bought, and I did say at the Senate and also in the National Assembly that we received a total of 2.1 billion shillings from the Ministry of Health. And obviously, they were asking us to procure certain things on behalf of the Ministry of Health so that they could be distributed to the needy places, to the counties, you know, to rural health facilities and to other places. So it is not possible to remove the Ministry of Health from this, because the money that was given by the World Bank, for instance, came to us through the Ministry of Health, And we were instructed to make certain procurements on behalf of the ministry and then distribute them as the ministry directed. So the ministry, yes, was involved in the procurement because it's our mother ministry first and foremost. And we cannot quite operate outside our ministry. And this COVID issue was an emergency, and the ministry, both the CS and the whole Ministry of Health, had to do several things to mitigate the issue of the newfound pandemic in our country.
But in as far as their specific involvement of the ministry, to where did it stop in as far as procurement was concerned? Was it simply to say the things that they wanted and where they wanted them distributed, or did they go down to the detail of who to purchase from?
First of all, I think it's important to understand what KEMSA does, because this is something that is getting whitewashed in the whole of all these issues. When these issues are politicized and there's so much talk, people forget that KEMSA has a mandate under the KEMSA Act 2013, amended in 2019, to procure, warehouse, and distribute. Now, we do not procure on our own behalf. We procure on behalf of the government, the Ministry of Health, for instance. We procure on behalf of Global Fund, and we procure on behalf of the USAID. We procure on behalf of all these people, and then invariably we get instructions on how to distribute. First of all, we warehouse for them, and they give us a fee or pay us a fee for that service. And then invariably they instruct us on how to distribute the things that we have procured on their behalf.
My question is specifically, did they give you instruction on who to purchase from? Not what to purchase where to take it?
There is a letter that has been doing the rounds on 758 million shillings. And that was 758 million shillings was the money that had come from the World Bank. And to that letter is attached a list of the things that were to be purchased and from whom. But I want to make it clear.
So it is an authentic letter?
It's an authentic letter, right. But I want to make it here clear and now that list, the list that is doing the rounds, just because it was attached to the letter from the Permanent Secretary, Susan Mochache, that list had actually emanated from KEMSA. Because we are the ones who do procurement. And we are the ones who have been asked by the ministry to procure those several items from several people. But because when COVID came, in April, we started getting a lot of people showing interest to sell to us PPEs, face masks, testing kits, and even ventilators and so many other things. The ministry did not know who these people are. So in discussions with the ministry and our CA and our CEO, the suspended CEO now, they had prepared that list. It is that list that then was used by the ministry to set out the people who had the capacity pursuant to the letters of commitments that we had received and the show of interest. So that letter came, although it came attached to a letter from the Permanent Secretary, that list had actually emanated from KEMSA.
All right, and we'll discuss that in a little detail. But first, I just want to get an understanding of the procurement process, and so let's deal with that. What specific tendering process was used to procure items for COVID-19? Was it hybrid, or was it just direct procurement? How did you go about it?
Okay. The other thing I want to tell you before I come to that is that we do two types of procurement. I told you we do procurements on behalf of the ministry. We do procurements on behalf of the Global Fund and USAID. We also do procurements using KEMSA capital, that is our own money, our own revolving fund, because one of our mandates is to procure and then sell to the counties. You must remember that KEMSA has the monopoly or has the mandate to procure and then sell and distribute these health products and technologies to the counties. So,
in respect of COVID-19 now.
I know you're asking about COVID-19, but I think you need to have a background on how these things are done. When COVID came, and His Excellency the President declared it a pandemic, when the first case was discovered on about 13th or 15th of March this year, it was declared to be an emergency. And the procurement rules or laws on emergencies are different from the normal procurement laws. In an emergency, you are allowed under the Act to procure without going through the normal tender. And we sought the advice from the Solicitor General,
right.
and we had the advice generally from the PPRA, the Procurement Authority. So all these things were in black and white on how to do the procurement
and you have letters
for emergency.
To the same
well, we
effect.
have letters to that effect, yes. Yeah. And we followed that to the letter.
Right. So in that scenario then, who was directly involved in that procurement process? Did you, for instance, have to still set up a tendering committee or not?
We have a director of procurement. We have a CEO first and foremost. We have a director of procurement, and we also have a commercial director. We have 7 directorates at KEMSA, over and above the board of directors. And their work is set out because the main mandate of KEMSA is to procure and warehouse. So those are the two things. So procurement is our speciality at KEMSA, right, because that's what we do from every day.
So there was no committee, it was just dealt with the specific officer?
It was dealt with by the Directorate of Procurement and the Commercial Services Director and the CEO's office. That is how they did it, so that they were able to get commitments for what was required, whether it was from the ministry,
okay,
or on behalf of the ministry.
To what extent was the board involved in that?
The board would not be involved in procurement.
Not at all? Not at all,
because that is day-to-day management. Board gives general directions on how things are done. The board agrees and agrees a budget at the commencement of the financial year, and then the board also confirms what we call a procurement plan. And we had a procurement plan for the year 2019-2020, and that is there in black and white. We had a budget for the year 2019-2020, that again is there in black and white. But of course, you must note and remember that that procurement plan did not have COVID in it, because we had our own plan up to June, end of June 2020. COVID came in mid-March of 2020. It was not something that had been factored into the budget for that year. It came in as an emergency, but obviously KEMSA was expected to have COVID-19 related commodities to ameliorate or to mitigate the pandemic in the country.
Senator Ledamo Lekina challenged and said that there were emails that clearly showed you directing, for instance, the signing of a contract at a specific or by a specific time, and that is proof that the board was directly involved in how these tenders.
This has nothing to do with COVID-19. I think you need to understand that also. KEMSA is an entity, and COVID-19 came and found us doing what we do from day to day. So there are COVID-related, 19-related issues, and there are day-to-day procurements that go on at KEMSA.
So none of that instruction dealt with COVID?
Would have to deal with the distinction between those two things. Because even today, even as we are still warehousing COVID-19 related commodities, we are still continuing with our normal day-to-day business of procuring, warehousing and distributing health products and technologies.
Right. Yeah. And as things stand now, the agency has this stock of PPE and supplies worth, I think, is it 6.2 billion shillings in stores, having already overshot its budget.
That's right.
How do you intend to deal with it?
I think also, before we come to how we intend to deal with it, because I think that's a very important question that you have now raised, it's also important to want to know why we are having stocks worth 6.2 billion shillings and why it is not moving at the moment. I would like the whole world, indeed all the Kenyan citizens, to know that the procurements for COVID-19 commodities at KEMSA were done between the months of March, April and May. We have not procured in June, except those instances where there was an extension for delivery of any item. And the other thing I think that people need to be told candidly without any shortcuts about it is that COVID-19 related items were costing what they were costing in March, April and May. And that is not what they are costing today. The mask that you are wearing today, for instance, if it was N95, you could most likely have bought it for between 700 and 900 shillings in March. Today, you could buy it maybe for 500 shillings, for 450 shillings. But the reports that keep coming in seem to show, not to realize that there were those stages between March, April, May, and June up to August that Prices have fluctuated and changed, but every time, like when I was before the Senate and then before the National Assembly the day before, even when we told them that we bought at 900 shillings then, and that was the average cost of that item at that moment, they still continue to report that those things were costing 450 shillings at that time. They forget, unless they are doing a direct misleading of the people, that the cost today may be 450, maybe even 300 shillings, but it was 900, in some instances 1,200, and depending on the timing and what exactly that was being bought. And then I want to remind people also that it was around this same period when we were buying a 3-ply mask for 50 shillings each, therefore 5,000 shillings for a carton of so many. That is what it was costing then. Today you got, if you went to a supermarket, to a chemist, that's how much you bought it at then.
So because you're talking of masks, let me give you the example.
Let me just finish.
Hold on, sir, because we're running out of time, but just on the same issue of masks, an example that is often quoted, for instance, in the letter that we talked about from the PS, for instance, you had Mission for Essential Drugs, which was charging 250 for one mask, allocated 1,000 face masks, while Megascope was bidding for 900 a piece, allocated 10,000 pieces. Just from that, there were suppliers who had some fairly cheap prices.
But if you look at that letter and do a critic of that letter, you find that Meds, which was selling at 250 shillings, had only 1,000 units. If you look at that, if you have that letter with you, I don't know whether or not you have it. I don't have it here with me. But they had only 1,000 units. And that was not sufficient because the ministry was clear that it required so many. Now, obviously, we bought from Meds. Maybe they had old stocks, maybe. And you can see that they're the only ones who are selling at 200. The others were selling between 700 and 900 shillings. Right? So maybe Meds had that small stock of 1,000 units of those masks, N95, but the others were importing them at the prices that were being imported at that time. And you notice that we have not bought any more masks from Meds, but we have continued to buy from the other suppliers at the price that I'm telling you. So there is no mistake at all. There is no double pricing that people are talking about. It is quite clear, and I hope you have that letter, because if you have it, then you ask yourself, why is Meds supplying us, quoting for us for only 1,000 units? What I suspect happened at that moment is that was the stock they had, and it was old stock, because ordinarily K95 masks or N95 masks are not used on the streets. These are for doctors, these are used for tuberculosis.
But you don't know that for certainty.
I'm telling you what I believe. And exactly the point you are making, those are allegations. I am in a position to tell you.
You're telling me what you believe, not what you know as fact.
I can also tell you what I know as fact, and I'm challenging.
So do you know it as a fact that was only the number of units that they had? Is that what you're saying?
It must be, because they're the only ones they offer to sell us.
It must be, it's not a fact.
It must be, because if they had more than that, and somebody was buying them, and Meds is in the business of selling commodities just like KEMSA, they would have sold to us everything they had at that moment.
All right, let me take some quick questions from Twitter. Maina Kabiri is asking, Ambassador, exactly how much financing for COVID-19 has KEMSA received, and how much has been lost through corruption?
Oh, I don't know about corruption myself, but I said at the beginning that the amount of money we have, the money we have received from the Ministry of Health on COVID-related items is 2.1 billion shillings, and that we have not even utilized the whole amount of that, the whole of that amount of money. It is work in progress. We are continuing to procure on behalf of the Ministry of Health, and these are stratified. Yeah, okay. I mentioned to you the 758 million shillings, out of which we have used 304 million shillings already supplied and been paid by the ministry, and another 148 million shillings which we have billed the ministry.
Okay. Another one is asking Samuel Wanjeri on Facebook, why did he not know that money was being stolen? Related to that, also on Facebook, Owino Daniel, is he in a position to assist recover all the stolen money in an organization he was overseeing? So let me condense it as such. Is it, to the best of your knowledge, are you saying that no money was misappropriated or was stolen in this KEMSA process, or do you believe that there is something questionable?
You know, the reason we have the several arms, the reason EACC is conducting an investigation is at KEMSA is, first of all, to verify whether there was double pricing, which people are claiming there was, which I don't believe there was, is to verify whether there were kickbacks, is to verify whether there was corruption, and that is why also the Office of the Auditor General has been at KEMSA for the last 1 month or so, and they are doing their own audit and they are doing their own investigations, partly on the request of the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly, partly on the request of the Health Committee of the National Assembly, so that those questions that are being asked about corruption can be answered. It is not enough for anybody to say, you cannot tell me as a chairman of KEMSA that I should have seen corruption happening. I'm not a procurement officer. I chair the board, and the board has its own committees. And I told you that the chairman of the board or the board itself are not involved in the day-to-day issues of management. Otherwise, the board could then as well go and sit at the offices there and run the show. But we cannot. If you look at the act or any act of law establishing a board, our work is to give direction to the management on how to go about the business.
Okay, let me take another question. Gitonga Mugo, you say, how much is he, in brackets, personal worth after ascending to the chairpersonship of the KEMSA board? And you continue, P.S., I don't expect a truthful answer, neither do I imagine he will take the time to answer this. But, I mean, the question goes to the heart of the allegations that you yourself were the recipient of a bribe to the tune of 45 million shillings. Is that the case?
From who?
From one of the suppliers?
I have never received a bribe, whether at KEMSA or elsewhere, to influence anything. And I want, if anybody claims I've received 45 million shillings, or even 10 million shillings, whatever number of money, my advice to them would be very simple. To go to Karura and report to the DCI, or report to the EACC so that it can be investigated. You know, when you talk about... Are
you willing to open up your accounts to public scrutiny?
It's not a question of willing. That is the law. That is why we have EACC. That is why they have the mandate to come and tell me, Kembi Gitura, we want to see your accounts and we want to see how you have operated them from this point to the next point. If they want me to give them a list of what I have and what I don't have, again, it's not something I can tell them I won't, because that is the law. And I'm quite willing to answer your question for them to take that position or take that step.
All right. What due diligence was done on the companies that were awarded the tenders?
I expect so. I expect that that is part of the people who do the procurement. But again,
to your knowledge?
Again, the board doesn't do procurement. This is the thing that people need to understand, that the board does not do procurement. The reason we have a procurement director, the reason we have an internal auditor, the reason then we have the Office of the Auditor General is so that those questions can be answered, so that instead of people making allegations of corruption, instead of people making allegations of double pricing or what have you, it is possible for the Auditor General to come out and give out clearly what the situation is regarding procurement.
But even in this emergency scenario where you were having to do direct procurement, you were not curious as the board to ensure that still, due process was being followed?
Why should I be? We have a budget. We have given them a budget. It was obvious that it was possible for the budget to be surpassed because, like I say, COVID came within, when there were only 3 months left to the end of the financial year. And therefore, you would expect that we had spent most of the budget as of that time, the budget that we had for 4.6 billion shillings. But then COVID came. It would have been irresponsible for us as an authority, which is mandated to deal with this kind of situations. It would have been extremely irresponsible for us not to procure COVID-19 related items so that we have them, so that if they are required in the counties, that we are able to deliver them or distribute them to the counties.
But you don't know. You don't know if any pre-qualification procedure was followed.
It must have been followed. Like I mean, the normal procurement procedures and laws were followed. That is why I keep saying there is...
You know, there's something with your answers. You're saying it must have been. I'm sure it was. Is it? Are you saying that with certainty from a point of knowledge, or your hope as a chairman that it
I'm
was
saying
done?
it with certainty because it's common knowledge that you cannot do procurement otherwise than using the laid down standard. And I'm telling you that in an emergency like the one we have now of COVID, because COVID is still with us, we took advice from the Solicitor General, who is the advisor to the government and to public entities. And we have it in black and white. And that was followed. Was there prudence in buying so many items like the one that we are holding 6.2 billion shillings? That's a question for another, that's a different question altogether. And it does not mean that there was corruption or that there was double pricing just because we have stock worth 6.2 billion shillings in our warehouses. The stock is there.
What does it mean then? What does it mean if you overshot your budget?
It means, and that's why I say it's a question of prudence, and that is what has to be determined. It means that somebody who owns a business in Nairobi bought so many stocks of, say for instance, beer, because he knew it was going to be, August is a good beer selling month. And he had several crates of beer, and he stocked it in his warehouse. And then, with nothing to do with him or her, COVID came, curfew was declared, bars were closed, eateries were closed, you have your beer, it is nearing expiry day, and you still have stocks there. It's not a question of corruption, it's not a question of imprudence, it's a question of a market shifting when you are having commodities with you that are not moving as fast as they need to. Because
what specific stocks are in excess?
Let me say this, because you must know this. You must know this, that even as we had imported through our suppliers the COVID-related items like masks and PPEs, etc., the ministry, through the effort of Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe and his team, they started having PPEs manufactured here. And whereas we were buying PPEs for 9,000 shillings, PPE prices came to 4,500 shillings. The masks that people are wearing, which were going for 5,000 shillings, we started making them here. As I'm sitting here, we are working with the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have 300 million shillings from the ministry that we are holding, which is going to be used to enable the smaller manufacturers through Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry to manufacture reusable masks. Now, this is going to bring it down even further. So if we had bought a mask...
So you're saying it was a question of
if we had bought a mask...
So let me return to my earlier question.
But let me finish this one.
What then will you do with these excess stocks? How do you intend to dispose of it?
God forbid, all of us want COVID to end. We pray every day that COVID should end. But COVID is still here. And the masks that we have, the PPEs we have, are still good quality masks. Yeah? We may not be able to offload them at the price that we bought them for of 6.2 billion shillings. And we have asked for the authority of the Cabinet Secretary, because we have to ask for his authority due to the procurement laws to allow us to offload them at the current prices. The government can do many things, because it can also give us a distribution list, because there are still places where there are no PPEs at the moment. There are still places where there are no face masks and so many other things and sanitizers. If the government instructs us to distribute them, like the government does from time to time, then we'll distribute those items. They'll serve the purpose for which we bought them. We'll lose some money, but nobody is going to suffer. We are going to make the payments to our suppliers, and we are going to have the float or the cash flow that we need at KEMSA. But the items we are holding are there. They are intact. When I was in Senate, when I was in the National Assembly, I told them that the doors to all our warehouses are open. In Mombasa, Kisumu, here in Embakasi, and in Commercial Street, and everywhere else, so that they can verify for themselves that everything is intact and can be distributed or sold at a market price, the current market price, so that we do not continue to lose money.
Because we're out of time, just a final question. The President this past week moved PS Mochache, appointing her PS Medical Services. That was later withdrawn. What do you make of that move?
I wouldn't. I would not even think about it. That's a presidential prerogative to move PSs and CSs as he finds fit to create more efficiency.
But it certainly happened at a curious time when she is the subject of controversy that equally affects the authority which you chair.
Like I say, even tomorrow the president can move the CS and bring in another CS. That is his prerogative, that is his mandate.
All right, we're out of time. We'll see how it plays out. KEMSA is due back before the Senate, and we'll be following and reporting here on Punchline. That's our time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed.